Good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks to esSENSE Global for inviting me to this event. The talk is on life's energy. I'll come to what it actually means. This is mostly adapted from the works of Professor Nick Lane. He's a biochemist, mainly from his book Vital Question, also adapted from his other books, and there are a lot of his talks on YouTube online. Coming to the topic, you all know life is about energy, and ATP, if you have heard of it, is the energy molecule of the life, is the energy currency. Whatever you want to do in a cell, be it metabolism, be it construction, be it movement, whatever you want to do in the cell, the currency for the energy is cell. So, in a country, suppose you go to a shop, you want to buy something, whatever be it, you want currency. So, similarly, whatever you want to do in a cell, you need ATP molecule. A single cell in a body, uses about 10 million molecules of ATP every second. We have 30 trillion cells in a body, so you can imagine how many molecules we use. That is about 60 to 100 kg per day. It's almost a body weight, but we recharge the same molecule about 1 to 2 times a minute. So, it comes to a single ATP molecule is reused about 1500 times a day. So, life uses this ATP molecule universally, and where is it produced? Where do you get the ATP molecule from? We know mitochondria, the blue circles shown in the figure are mitochondria. Usually when we draw a cell, we draw 1 or 2 mitochondria, but each cell has around 500. Very active cells have about 2000 mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. That's how we define mitochondria. And the ATP molecules are synthesized at the membrane of the mitochondria. We metabolize food, oxidize the food to get the energy. So, food, glucose molecules and the intermediates of the metabolism passes the electron to this electron transport chain in the membrane. It has 3 main protein complexes. They pass the pair of electrons from one to the other. The electrons make about 15 jumps within these 3 complexes, that is through quantum tunneling, and ultimately it's passed on to the oxygen. The food doesn't pass directly to the oxygen, but instead it passes the electrons through this chain. Even if you keep the metabolites and oxygen together, they just don't burn, they just don't react, because there is an energy barrier, there is a kinetic barrier. If it did, we all will spontaneously go up in flames, because luckily they don't do. This electron transport chain helps to overcome this barrier by lowering the barrier, and as they do it step by step, they release the energy slowly, and that energy is utilized by the electron transport chain, the proteins in that, to transport H plus molecules, protons, across the membrane. So, the membrane creates the electron transport chain creates a energy charge difference between the either side of the membrane. Inside it's negative now, outside is positive. So, that creates about 30 million electron volts per meter, because the charges are less, but the membrane thickness is very less. So, the field created is very high, almost the strength of a lightning. That much charge difference is charge potential is created across the membrane, and here you can see another complex, protein complex, that is the ATP synthase, that slowly lets in this protons, and that energy is utilized in creating the ATP molecule. So the energy is not directly passed from the metabolism to the ATP. The chemical energy is converted to electrical energy, and that electrical energy is again converted to the chemical energy stored in ATP, and that can be bought by various systems in the cell to utilize it. And this is the figure of ATP synthase molecule complex. It's actually a rotating motor. You don't see the smooth, it's actually rotating smoothly like a pump. Because it's an animation, you are seeing it moving slowly. It's actually revolving very fast and very smooth and silent, so our body doesn't emit the constant humming sound or anything like a pump. Why this is called proton motive force? Why does the life work like this? Why does instead of creating directly utilizing the chemical energy, it's converted to electrical energy and then to chemical energy? Why does the life work like this? And this is the person, Peter Mitchell, who taught us all this. He was awarded Nobel Prize in 78 in chemistry, and that's his quote. It basically says an organism doesn't exist independently in nature. Life is made possible by the interaction between an organism and its environment, and it's the interface, the membrane, that makes it possible. The life exists because of the interaction between the inside and outside through the membrane. So why does it work like that? This mechanism works in all life, in eukaryotes, in prokaryotes, in all domains of life. The mechanism of life is same. So that must have started right at the origin of the life. So how did the life originate? Usually what we hear is that life originated in a chemical soup in the sea, where the biochemical molecules form spontaneously by the energy of the lightning from the ammonia and carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere. But that's mostly given up now. We come to know about the conditions of early Earth through zirconium crystals. There are crystals formed we get it from rocks, and they act like cages. When they form, they confine the surroundings, the molecules around that, inside them, and when we open it, we actually see what it was like when they formed. So when we get to know about the early Earth's atmosphere, we was actually surprised that there was very little ammonia and cyanide that actually the primordial soup theory predicts. Actually, it's from looking at the atmosphere in Venus that they speculated that it was like that. But zirconium crystals tell another story. There was very little ammonia and methane in the Earth's atmosphere, and also by energetics, the energy in the lightning was not as much as we thought. It would have required very high energy, a lot of lightning to create life in that atmosphere. And it's very destructive also. Life is very delicate. So in that sort of an atmosphere, life can't form. The current proposal is still a proposal, it's still a hypothesis, but proved in parts and also verified by the energetics and other theories in chemistry, that life formed in this alkaline hydrothermal vent in the sea. This hydrothermal vent is formed by the seawater seeping into the mantle of the earth. The mantle is consists of olivine rocks that is rich in iron and magnesium and sulfur. So the water oxidizes it and it forms ferric oxide, magnesium hydroxide and also hydrogen. The magnesium hydroxide makes it alkaline, and the reaction is exothermic. So the water gets heated up and it comes up, it bubbles up with rich hydrogen in it. So this water, warm water which is alkaline and which contains iron and magnesium, bubbles up from the sea floor, and the crystals, the minerals in that deposit on the sea floor as serpentine rocks. That's what you see as rock formation, and they form very porous rock, full of gaps in between, very porous rock, and that rock is called serpentine, and the process is called serpentinization, because these rocks, the texture of the rocks resemble the skin of a serpent. And this olivine rock is present universally in all the planets, in even interplanetary dust, in comets, etc. That has been verified. So this process goes on everywhere, and in early life it must have occurred throughout on the seabed. And this proposal was made, this was actually predicted, the process of serpentinization and existence of these hydrothermal vents were actually predicted by the scientist Mike Russell in 1990, and nobody took him seriously for 10 years, and actually they were discovered in exactly the same place, about 20 kilometers from the intercontinental ridge in the mid-Atlantic ridge. Exactly the same place he predicted, they were found, and in exactly the same conditions. So if you look at these rocks, they are very porous, and the seawater and the vent water which is alkaline and warm, circulate through the channels in the rock. So inside this pores, the seawater in the early atmosphere was very acidic, because there was lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and that reacted with the water and produced carbonic acid. So it was acidic, and vent water was alkaline. So both must have come across, both must have circulated next to each other through different channels in the rocks. And what happens then is, the hydrogen in the vent water gives its electron to the carbon dioxide on the other side, to the seawater, across thin rock, and the ferrous sulfide in the rock, which also deposited, which also comes out through the vent water and gets deposited there, it actually catalyzes the reaction. Now what makes this possible is, like if they are on if both hydrogen and carbon dioxide are on the same side of the membrane, they won't react, because in the same pH the energetics of the reaction is such that the carbon dioxide gives out the electron more easily than hydrogen. So the reaction will proceed the other way, but because they are on either side of the membrane, on the alkaline side hydrogen gives out electron more easily, and on the seawater side, acidic side, the carbon dioxide gives out electron more reluctantly. This tendency to give out electron is called reduction potential. So reduction potential of hydrogen is more in alkaline pH and less, that of carbon dioxide is less in acidic pH. So the interface of the two fluids in different temperature across a membrane which has minerals, iron minerals deposited in them, makes this reaction possible. And what they found then is these basic organic molecules, and in this case it is formaldehyde It's a C1 molecule, means 1 carbon, and as more carbon dioxide reacts with this formaldehyde, then they form C2 organic molecules, C3 like C4 like that, and so the organic molecules form on the acidic side of the pore, and they also get concentrated there by a process called thermophoresis. This molecule is fluid is in movement, and there is temperature gradient, and all that creates eddies and all, and in some places, in cooler and slower places, these organic molecules get deposited, and they also tend to polymerize into longer chain carbohydrates, fatty acids, and by reacting with ammonia, amino acids, and then proteins. And these fatty acids have a tendency to form vesicles spontaneously, because fatty acid is hydrophobic on one side and hydrophilic on the other side. They organize themselves spontaneously. Even if you just shake a mixture of fatty acid, they will spontaneously form into cells or vesicles. So as these vesicles form, they will contain some protein and all, and here is what happens. Some vesicles form at this interface, the inorganic rock barrier, and initially it's very porous. On one side there is acidic seawater, and other side it's alkaline seawater. They are flowing, and the hydrogen ion protons come into the cells, and the same reaction takes place there. The early organic molecules form out of that: carbohydrates, proteins, and fatty acids. And fatty acids then move on to this porous membrane. The cell enlarges, it accumulates more proteins and all, and some proteins then, here one protein is shown. This are all random reactions. They just produce random proteins, not actually, they don't have genetic material then. So the proteins, the molecules formed are totally random, and the selection first started without any genetic code in this proposal. So whichever happen to accumulate more reactive molecules, they form larger cells, and here one of such protein molecules depicted, one of the earliest that's supposed to have formed. It was energy converting hydrogenase that uses the proton gradient to form again the same to catalyze the same reaction between hydrogen and carbon dioxide, forming the organic molecules. So cells synthesize fatty acid, membrane, protein, enzymes that catalyze the metabolism, and slowly it gets started. And what happens then is they develop pumps that actively pump the molecules out. They form more impermeable membranes. They create their own environment. They start metabolism, and then they can escape out of these vents into the open sea. So the life must have started according to this proposal, which I think is really possible either in this or very similar environment and by similar process. The usually proposed mechanism, that is primordial soup, that was more component oriented. The usual discussion is what formed first, DNA, RNA, or protein. They were thinking of life like if you put together all the components of the life will start. It's proposal is like that. It's like assembling life like Lego blocks. You put together all molecules. How do you breathe life into it? And in this, it's the process oriented. The other one is component oriented. This is process oriented. There's an inorganic process, abiotic process going on in earth in certain conditions. In that process, part by part is slowly replaced by organic components, and ultimately the inorganic process slowly converts into organic, and then comes the genes and chromosomes, and then the evolution started. I find this more elegant and more plausible. So ultimately, what is life? Whenever you think of life, what comes to your mind is this picture, that of DNA. We usually think of life as information, and also as ability to reproduce, ability to divide, ability to reproduce. But life is not just reproduction and division. Life is the process. It is the metabolism. It's the energy process that's going on in there. Suppose a cell divides into daughter cells, and the daughter cells lose their ability to reproduce. They can't anymore divide. There are so many such cells in our body, and do you call them dead? They are still living till they are dead. So I think a better way, there's no need to define life, just different view of life, and life also can be defined by metabolism. The metabolism that's going on, the energy separation, synthesis of ATP, like that. Life may also be defined by death. So till death we are all living. Cyanide. What does cyanide do? Cyanide simply blocks this electron transport chain, the third protein complex. So it turns off this process, and you know what happens? Death is instantaneous. So life may be defined, instead of division and information. That's also one way of defining life. I am not denying it. Also may be defined in terms of energy and metabolism. So from the very first cell till each of your cells, you have so many trillions of cells, I told, to each of the mitochondria inside those cells. Each cell has 500 to 2000 mitochondria. Each of the cell's membranes, the charge separation has been maintained for 4 billion years from the origin of life. Never even for a moment this charge was lost, and the charge is going to be lost in each of your cells. You are losing cells every moment. In each of the cells the charge is diffused for first time in 4 billion years as each of your cell dies. So till then the life is kept alive by this mechanism. So life may also be defined that way. So I come to the end of my talk. Thank you for listening. You have any questions?
So you just explained one other way of forming life. There were other possibilities already. Many people have said that. So this can be formed on one way, another way, like that. There are multiple theories in that one. So every time a theory or a proposal is formed, that is getting supported by some kind of evidences or proof they are pointing at. So if you are proposing a new theory or new way of formation of life, so it's also coming with a proof. You just mentioned that how that certain rocks and saline water is getting reacted and forming a form of even organic molecules. So my question is, so there are multiple ways, multiple proofs. In each way, there is getting one proof. Is it getting contradicted anywhere? Which means
I told you about the contradiction in the primordial soup theory, because the findings from the zircon rocks don't substantiate it, and also the energetics and the possibility, like how to breathe life into it. You have all molecules assembled together and see what there's nothing to hold them. So the things will diffuse. So till the process starts, how to hold them together. So these are all the questions in the primordial soup theory. There are other theories that life came from somewhere else, comets, and they are also possible. Even that it came from Mars, it's possible, not impossible. Like we can't never fully know actually what happened, because all the traces of it must have gone. But in this, the serpentinization is just the proof of the rock formation, not the life. The process, they have actually, I have not put the slides, they have actually made the working models of it. It's called reactors, small reactors, like where the water in different conditions flow through small channels, and they have actually produced the early organic molecules. And I have actually shown very early steps in this. Actually they have detailed how each step in the metabolism in entire Krebs cycle actually came to be. So by not just by showing, by its energetics, or by all means. And even like ATP molecule, as you said, the initially like adenosine must not have been there. So actually like only acetyl phosphate will act same like ATP, and acetyl CoA is the first step in the metabolism. So CoA molecules won't be there. That's bigger molecule. So just acetyl thioacetate, methyl thioacetate, it's just a thioester bond in that what is aiding the reaction. So even methyl thioacetate would have acted same way as acetyl CoA. In our body we have acetyl CoA now. At the time acetyl phosphate and acetyl phosphate would have acted the same way. So similar reactions would have taken place then, and that would have like ultimately led to more complex molecules with better efficiency, longer molecules, and self-assembly of cells, and even how the membrane works. Initially the membranes would have been very leaky, and only there was natural diffusion across that, and then actually initial cells didn't have any advantage by pumping out the protons. So it's like by pouring water into the sea. So as soon as you pump out the protein, it comes out in large numbers. So there was no evolutionary advantage in pumping out the. So actually what they suggest and what's actually like really possible is, it was pumping out the it evolved a sodium hydrogen pump, by which pumps out the sodium by using the energy of the hydrogen that is coming in freely. So that must have evolved, and then it must have like also the protein I showed, it's called energy converting hydrogenase. So we have main two domains of life, archaea and bacteria. And archaea proceeded one way. Actually one of the archaea and bacteria that converted egg into hydrogen pumping molecule, that started pumping hydrogen. And actually the other one, the sodium potassium pump, it's called co-transporter, it converted that into to pump the hydrogen in the reverse direction, pump out the hydrogen by using the sodium. Actually one domain of life is produces acetic acid, they are called estrogen, the bacteria, and archaea are called methanogens. They started out in very similar conditions, and then same molecule they started using in opposite ways. Actually our Krebs cycle started in the reverse direction initially. So then even in our cells now sometimes they are run in reverse direction. That's described more in his other book which is Transformer. That's his latest book. So many of these steps have been delineated and many of steps have been proved. There are also refutations of that keeps coming. But I think this or a very similar mechanism actually set start to the life, because it is more process oriented, it is energy oriented than just arguing about which one came first, RNA or DNA. They are very complex molecules, they are not simple molecules. This starts out very simply. It's like almost like physics. It explains life by small steps and how they till the last step. His book Life Ascending also describes how DNA and all evolved, how genetic information evolved.
Especially you said that this is predicted, that serotonin rock formation was prediction 1990.
Yeah.
So that's giving more advantage, right? If something is predicted.
Mike Russell actually predicted both serpentinization and the formation of life in these rocks. He predicted both. That was his theory, and nobody took him seriously for 10 years. He was saying, like in every conference, this fellow will stand up and say something and others will laugh. They mocked him for 10 years, and ultimately in 2000 they found the same thing in the same place that he described.
So that is giving an added weight to this proposal. Means something which is, it is not like a
Isaac Newton predicted this thing. So many other things. He wrote on so many things on Bible. He wrote on the formation of gold from lead and all. So you can't succumb to fallacy of authority. Still we hold Mike Russell in high regard, but I personally subscribe to this view because of its simplicity and plausibility. In science, there is one thing that the simplest theory is most often true.
As the age advances, the telomere shortens. So is there a way to inhibit the enzyme telomere?
You are talking about aging and telomere. Okay, that's not exactly regard to this. So far, like telomere is only one of the factors in aging. It's not the cause of aging and the factor in aging. By just cutting off the telomere or preventing the telomere reduction, you can't prevent aging. There have been so many trials, so many claims of slowing aging, and none have been conclusively proved. Okay, in YouTube, if you search, you can find so many lectures and talks and all that they have slowed the age, people will live till 150 and all. None have been substantiated. They are all still claims.
So explain about in your document, you told that a Krebs cycle happens in the reverse now. Could you elaborate on that?
Pardon?
You told that Krebs cycle occurs in the reverse manner. Can you further elaborate on that?
That itself will be a big talk. Actually, like carbon is metabolized in 6 different pathways, not just in Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle is there inside us. There are so many cycles, Calvin cycle and all. Krebs cycle can run in both ways. Even inside our cells, it can, like in a cancer cell, it's supposed to be running in the other way and producing more pro-inflammatory cells, not just in cancer cells, in also inflammatory cells. Okay, there actually the full oxidation of the glucose is not taking place, and partial fermentation reaction is what produces energy in. Actually, it's inefficient in cancer cells and produces many pro-inflammatory molecules. That's what it helps them inhibit the person's immunity, like overcome the immunity and prevent its destruction by the immune system. That's supposed to be like that. It's not full explanation of the malignancy, cancer, but these are the things that is found in cancer cells. One more thing, reverse direction of Krebs cycle is how the origin of Krebs cycle is explained. Okay, because the actual forward cycle, like according to us, that breaks down the food. Reverse cycle actually should make complex C6 molecule from C1 molecules. So it must have started that way, and actually it runs that way. So that's the proof that it, like, that's the explanation that it must have started that way, and actually it runs that way in many of the organisms, like in bacteria and all, and even sometimes in our own cells.